You ever see a country that's booming, but the people are still struggling? It's a huge paradox, right? And it's happening all over the globe. But here's the thing. It's not some accident of economics. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain and see how this deep-seated corruption is basically the fertilizer for a massive global shadow world. Alright, to really get this, let's zoom in on one country that is just a perfect example of this contradiction. We're talking about a place with incredible wealth, a culture that's just off the charts, and some serious economic muscle. But at the same time, it's wrestling with these huge systemic problems. I mean, you look at the numbers and Mexico is an absolute giant. We're talking the 11th largest economy on the planet. GDP, $2.4 trillion. And they're on track to crack the top 10 by 2050. And yet, get this, almost 42% of the people there live below the poverty line. So you gotta ask, how is that even possible? How can both of those realities exist at the same time? And if you want one number that just lays this whole thing bare, here it is, 29%. That's how much of the country's entire income is held by just the top 1%. You know, we talk about a wealth gap, but this is a chasm. And it didn't just happen. It was created and it's maintained by a system that's basically designed to pump money straight to the top. You know, this isn't a new problem. This quote right here from the historian Eduardo Galeano, it was written decades ago, but man, does it still hit hard today. It really gets at this long history of outside pressures and these internal power games that have locked this inequality in place. It's a system that's been built to keep most people from ever getting a piece of the pie. So let's be clear, this kind of inequality, it isn't just some unlucky side effect of a growing economy. No way. It's what happens when you have a system where the people in power are playing a totally different game with a totally different set of rules. And that whole system is built on one single, really corrosive idea: impunity. And impunity, it's a word that means more than just, getting away with it. It's when the entire system is rigged to protect the powerful. It's a world where the laws only apply to some people, where justice has a price tag, and where holding someone accountable is basically a fantasy. And when that happens, it just completely shatters the trust between the people and their government. Think about it. When there are zero consequences for corruption at the very top, that sends a message, right? A really clear one, all the way down the ladder. Impunity basically creates this black hole where law and order should be. And guess who rushes in to fill that space? Organized crime. And what's worse, they often do it by partnering up with the exact same officials who are supposed to be shutting them down. Okay, let's make this real. Here's a classic example, the White Mansion scandal. So you have this $7 million mansion. Turns out it's registered to a company owned by a huge government contractor. And who's living in it? Mexico's First Lady. Then, what do you know, that same contractor's company gets awarded a massive $3.7 billion contract for a high-speed rail line. The public went nuts, but the investigation, it just fizzled out. That is impunity in action. Or how about this one, the case of General Salvador Cienfuegos. This guy was Mexico's former defense minister. He gets arrested in the US by the DEA. The charge, working directly with organized crime. But then, after a ton of diplomatic pressure from Mexico, the US just drops the charges and sends him home. And back in Mexico, he was completely cleared. No trial, nothing. It's just a jaw-dropping example of how power can crush justice, even when it crosses international borders. Now, these stories out of Mexico are pretty shocking, right? But here's the kicker. They are not unique. This problem of crime and impunity, it doesn't stop at the border. It's a full-blown global crisis. And when you look at the data, it's pretty clear it's getting worse, not better. So to really wrap our heads around the scale of this, we're going to look at something called the Global Organized Crime Index. It's this amazing tool that pulls data from hundreds of experts all over the world. And it measures two really important things for basically every country on Earth. First, how much crime there is, and second, how well they can fight back, what they call resilience. And what they found? Well, it's staggering. According to the latest index, a whopping 83% of the entire world's population now lives in a country with high levels of criminality. Just let that sink in for a second. That's more than 4 out of every 5 people on the planet living in a place where organized crime has a real and often devastating grip on daily life. And this chart right here, it just perfectly illustrates the core problem. See that bar on the left? That's the global average for criminality. The one on the right is our collective resilience. our ability to fight back. And look at that gap. It's getting wider. Crime is spreading and getting stronger, but our ability to deal with it is basically flatlining. And that right there is where the real danger is. So, okay, criminality is on the rise. But what does that actually look like? Because the face of organized crime is changing. Big time. It's evolving. You know, when most of us hear organized crime, we probably picture something like the image on the left, right? You know, mafia guys, street gangs. And look, those groups are still out there. But the much bigger threat today, well, it often looks a lot more like the image on the right. We're talking corporate boardrooms, government offices, tangled financial networks. The battle has literally moved from the streets to the suites. Let's just break that down a bit. On one side, you've got your traditional mafia-style groups. We know what they look like. They have a name, a boss, they control a specific territory. But these new players are what experts call state-embedded actors. And what does that mean? It means they're people operating from inside the government itself. We're talking politicians, judges, high-ranking police, using their day jobs to run criminal empires. So what this really means is that crime isn't just some outside force trying to attack the state anymore. In a lot of countries, crime is the state. These state-embedded actors have become the most powerful, the most dominant criminal force in the world, precisely because they control the very systems that are supposed to be protecting all of us. And this chart shows you exactly what their main business is. It's not just about drugs and guns anymore, not by a long shot. The single biggest, most widespread criminal market on the planet today, financial crime. Yeah, we're talking about massive fraud, embezzlement, money laundering on an industrial scale. The kinds of crimes that steal tax money meant for schools and hospitals and can throw entire economies off balance. So when crime gets this sophisticated, this deeply embedded inside the system, and this widespread, I mean, how on earth do you even begin to fight back? Well, the answer seems to be in building up something called national resilience. And resilience isn't just about having more cops on the street or tougher laws on the books. It's a much bigger idea. It's about creating a society that's just fundamentally resistant to this kind of criminal takeover. It means you have to strengthen every single part of a nation, its government, its economy, its people. So what are the key building blocks? Well, you need a government that's transparent. You need judges that can't be bought and police that can't be bribed. You absolutely need tough financial controls to stop the flow of dirty money. And this is so important, you need strong non-state actors. What's that? Think investigative journalists, activists, community groups. And here is one of the most worrying trends the index found. These non-state actors, the journalists, the human rights defenders, the local activists, they're basically society's alarm system. They're the ones who expose corruption and hold powerful people accountable. But all over the world, the space for them to do their jobs freely and safely is shrinking. And it's simple. When you silence the watchdogs, you're just letting the criminals run free. When you really get down to it, what we're looking at here is a fight for the very soul of a society. Because when corruption and organized crime get this tangled up in the system, it's like they're tying the hands of the entire nation. It holds back everything: progress, justice, even just basic human potential. And that leaves us with maybe the toughest question of all. When crime is literally woven into the fabric of power, how does a society even begin to unpick those threads? It's not like cutting out a simple tumor. It's more like treating a disease that's spread everywhere. How do you possibly fight the system when the criminals are the system? There's no easy answer, of course, but it has to start with understanding just how deep the problem goes and then demanding accountability one threat at a time.